And we begin the readout tonight with the landmark case against Fox. In roughly 72 hours, 12 jurors and 12 alternates will finally begin to hear the case in which they decide if Fox and its anchors defamed Dominion voting systems using actual malice by knowingly falsifying and recklessly disregarding the truth. When the right-wing network aired conspiracy theories about Dominion's voting machines supposedly stealing the 2020 election. While Fox has insisted they did not act with actual malice, they have faced a string of embarrassing revelations that have exposed their hosts and supposed news anchors as pure propagandists. But evidence suggests that they knew they were amplifying the big lie and undermining American democracy. Make no mistake, this $1.6 billion defamation suit is the biggest crisis to threaten the multi-billion-dollar company since its inception. Fox's corporate overlord and real-life Logan Roy, 92-year-old Rupert Murdoch, oversees a global media empire that has earned billions of dollars, often by pumping racism, misogyny, and outright lies into conservative audiences in Europe, in Australia, and here in the U.S., with zero regard for the havoc it has wrought around the world. Fox has been the crown jewel in Murdoch's empire and has granted him exceptional power to shape public opinion, which he has chosen to do mainly by monetizing hate. Here's just a taste of what his hosts routinely mainline directly into the brains of their viewers.
We've got people being released at the border right now who've got COVID. Wait a minute. I listen to you. You listen to me. They've got COVID. They've got all kinds of diseases. They are being released into the United States.
White supremacy, that's the problem. This is a hoax. Just like the Russia hoax. It's a conspiracy theory used to divide the country and keep a hold on power.
It is a plot to remake America, to replace American citizens with illegals.
Democrats believe that old ladies walking through the halls of Congress taking selfies are a bigger threat than murderers and repeat violent offenders.
Is there anything you could have done to get the kind of coverage that Kamala Harris is getting now?
I would not have prostituted myself in terms of changing any of my positions in order to garner better press.
It's the same reason she started out her political career as Willie Brown's bratwurst bun. Kamala Harris will do anything to get ahead.
Sidney, we talked about the Dominion software. I know that there were voting irregularities. Tell me about that.
That's to put it mildly.
Feel free to take out the brain bleach. The Dominion case has also exposed how deeply involved Murdoch is in the editorial direction of many of his companies. In his deposition for the case, he admitted that he is, quote, a journalist at heart and likes to be involved in these things. In that same deposition, Murdoch acknowledged under oath that he could have told Fox chief executives and his stars at any time to stop lying about the 2020 election and to tell their viewers the truth, that Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden. But he chose not to. Why? Because they didn't want to alienate their audience by telling them the truth or make their advertisers, who sometimes double as guests, like the MyPillow guy, mad. In short, it was all about profit, but also about ideology and ego. Sitting atop his perch as the head of this right-wing media empire, Rupert Murdoch has unfettered power to shape the world in his image, a world that is anti-abortion, for big business and tax cuts for the wealthy, and scornful of social change. This chaotic poison is designed to be this way, and it has real-world consequences. The man who tried to crush Capitol Police Officer Daniel Hodges on January 6th said he was radicalized by watching Fox. He was just sentenced to more than 7 years in prison. He's not alone. A string of January 6th defendants have accused the network of infecting them with misinformation or downright brainwashing them. And make no mistake, Fox executives understand how serious the Dominion case is. One senior Fox staffer told Vanity Fair, if we lose this suit, it's effing bad. Malcolm Turnbull, the former Prime Minister of Australia and a former journalist himself, has known Rupert Murdoch for more than 4 decades. He has accused his fellow Australian of doing more to divide America than Vladimir Putin has. In his own country, Murdoch's News Corp has a roughly 60% share of circulation. 60%. Mr. Turnbull is heading a campaign that calls for a royal commission, Australia's highest form of public inquiry, into Murdoch's media dominance. He recently launched a podcast called Defending Democracy with Malcolm Turnbull, which examines whether Western democracies are in decline. And Malcolm Turnbull, the former Prime Minister of Australia, joins me now. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Great to be with you.
So you called Rupert Murdoch the most dangerous, more dangerous than Vladimir Putin to American democracy. How so?
Well, there is no individual alive that has done more to divide America than Rupert Murdoch. I mean, Fox News is the dominant cable news service. Its business model is to make people angry. It is really angertainment. They have no concern about the truth. I mean, the lie about the stolen election was the most dangerously consequential lie told in American politics in any of our lifetimes. I mean, your country was founded on a armed insurrection against illegitimate government. That's what the Tea Party was all about. And so there is Murdoch and his crew telling Americans that their government, Joe Biden, the president, was illegitimate. Saying that to the American people is like screaming out fire in a crowded theatre.
Yeah.
I mean, he did that knowing that it would have terrible consequences.
And the thing is that Fox News has a hold legitimately on a percentage of the public. We were talking before the show came on about the fact that it is this sort of inverse proportion of power, right? That the electorate, the audience at Fox is 90% white. It's majority white. It's overwhelmingly white. It's heavily male.
Very old.
And it is the part of the electorate that is losing its grip on national politics. It's very hard for Republicans of that mindset to win a presidential election or to win even a statewide election or a referendum on things like abortion or gay marriage, et cetera, which are more popular now in the United States. But even though they decline in terms of electoral power, that grip gets tighter and the content gets more far right.
Yeah, well, that's right. I think in many respects what you see is Murdoch has an audience that's large enough for him to monetise, but it doesn't represent a constituency that's large enough to win national elections. We see the same thing in Australia. Yeah. We've seen centre-left governments and parties, the Labor Party, winning elections despite ferocious attacks from the Murdoch media. And that, I think, is because of this very phenomenon. I mean, the paradox is that the centre-right political parties, which I used to lead, which is called the Liberal Party in Australia. I know that's confusing to Americans, but it is the centre-right party, sort of like the British Conservatives.
Yeah.
But the Murdoch's influence over the centre-right and indeed over the Republican Party, although question whether there's a lot of centre in the right there, but his influence over those parties is greater than ever, but the influence over the electorate is less because, as you say, that audience is becoming a smaller and smaller share of the electorate.
And are becoming radicalised. I mean, you have January 6 defendants saying they were radicalised by watching Fox News, and that's all they watch. And for a lot of people, Pew Research will say it, you know, they are the most trusted among their viewers, and they won't watch anything else. They only watch that.
That's a really... Radicalised is absolutely a concept to hang on to. So John Cohen, who's one of the people I interviewed in the podcast that you referred to earlier, is a Homeland security expert here in the United States. He's worked for the FBI. He's worked, you know, keeping America safe against extremism all his life. And he describes the radicalisation of right-wing media, of which Fox is the largest part, as being so similar to the radicalisation of people like ISIL and Al-Qaeda, the same techniques they used on young Muslims, particularly young Muslim men. And so essentially you've got now a media audience that is in silos. See, when I first got to know Rupert Murdoch in the 1970s, would you believe, to have a media business, you had to reach a broad range of viewers because to maximise the audience for your advertising and so forth. And a combination of, you know, technology and other things has enabled you to actually narrowcast now. And so now we've got people living in silos. And so if you are just following right-wing media, if you're following, you know, Fox News, if you're living in that bubble, and that is where, regrettably, so much of right-wing politics is going on, then sure, you can believe that, you know, Donald Trump won the election. You can believe that, you know, the Democratic Party is run by Satanists and all of this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And that, of course, creates the environment which leads to extremism. And the tragedy is that this great country, upon which every person who believes in freedom in the world today depends on, is more divided than it's ever been, I guess, since the Civil War.
Since the Civil War. I think that is entirely accurate.